Hi friends, this is Tina and welcome to my new video. In this video, we are setting up my November theme, and weirdly enough, even though I haven't been in the best mindset bullet journal wise lately, this turned out to be one of my favorite themes that I've ever done. Novembers in Finland are really dark and gloomy, and I wanted to show that with my bullet journal theme as well, so I went with these dark academia vibes and tried to incorporate rain and rainy windows in this theme as well. But let's start working on this theme. So if you're gonna do the same thing as I did with my cover page, which was these window frames, I would suggest using two spreads like I did. And we're gonna start by first painting the right page. This is of course going to be the view you see outside the window frames. So I'm going by first taping the edges of my painting, and then I'm starting with the painting itself. And this is actually interesting because I only spent less than an hour painting in this whole setup. I don't know how that happened, but I am really happy with it. And yeah, I have to say this theme was all about just creativity and experimenting and trying out something new. And I'm really happy that I did that instead of just painting in my setup and just making it more simple and my style, I guess. I will have all of my painting shades in the corner of this video while I'm painting, but for the sky I used some white, some black and brown to create this really dark, grayish but warm tone for the sky. Usually I go for lighter gray skies, but here I wanted to really take the gloominess to the next level by having this darker sky, and I think that worked really well. And like I said, I didn't paint for that long, so I didn't want to do anything perfectly with this painting, so I tried to be really loose and less mindful of what I'm doing. So I'm just using the same brush as I used for the sky when I'm making the forest below that. And this is interesting, but I actually did use the same paint for everything. So basically the paint mixture that I used for the sky, I just added some green and maybe yellow to it to create the green forest. So I didn't mix a completely new shade. That's what I think worked with this painting, because I didn't really want to clean my palette and make these really clean paint mixes. I just used the ones that I had used before and just added some colors on top of it. And I also think that worked because I had this more grayish gloomy color that I used for the sky, and then I mixed some green into that, so I didn't have to create this more muted green and use a lot of color from my tubes. So as you can see, the top of the forest is a lot lighter in color, and we're going darker as we go lower. And to the bottom, I'm adding some darker red and orange tones for some of the trees that are closer to you. This painting process was definitely interesting because instead of going with the details and trying to get away from the ugly stage that usually I go through when I'm painting, I didn't really do that. I kind of skipped the second step of that painting process and instead left it really messy and really loose, like I said. And as you can see, I'm not really adding that much details on top. I'm usually going with smaller brushes and really focusing on some parts and trying to make them look more detailed, but here I didn't do that at all. Because I wanted the painting to look a little bit more rainy and foggy, I also chose a lot darker colors. So for example, for the autumnal trees in the bottom part of the painting, I didn't go for any vibrant oranges, and instead I just chose like a burgundy color and maybe added a little bit of orange on top so it would look a little bit more deep and mysterious almost. So yeah, that's my thought process behind this whole painting process. But like I said, it didn't take that long. I think I only spent 30 minutes on this painting. I knew that I was going to be covering most of this painting up with the window frames anyway, so I thought, why spend too much time on something that is not even going to be the main focus of one spread. I would love to know how November looks like in your country, because I know for some people November is almost like the peak autumn season, but here it's definitely not that. Novembers are usually pretty dark, gloomy, and also really cold. The sun is setting right now and it's 5:30, and in a couple of weeks it will already start setting at like 4 p.m, which is so sad. I love sun, I love daylight, and I don't mind rain, but when it's really constant rain and like really cold rain, that is something I do not like. And I just love autumn, so the fact that our autumns here in Finland are so short, that is just so sad, and I would just love to enjoy the cozy and autumnal months more, but they're just so short, like it's ridiculous. After adding a bit more of these random little lines and tree silhouettes, I was done with this painting. But the next thing I started working on was a window frame on the left spread. So I just flipped the page over and the window frames are going to be straight above the painting that I just did. I actually started this whole process by first sketching the window frame and then sketching the area for the painting underneath. So I had already done the measurements for the window frames, and I started using my crafting knife and just taking these pieces out and cutting the whole window frame. And I actually reused the little cutouts that I took from inside the windows because I used them later with my habit trackers. As you can see, I'm using this cutting mat underneath my page when I'm cutting it, and I would highly recommend you to do the same thing or just use like a piece of cardboard or something if you are also using crafting knives, because of course it will prevent you from ruining the page that is underneath. But next it was time to paint the window frames, and I did this pretty quickly using just a brown and red and black gouache and mixed them together to create this wood color. And I painted the front first, but I also painted the other side of the window frames after adding that little glass texture that I put on there as well. So I tried to only use things that I had at home because I was kind of in a hurry when I was making this theme, but I tried to first use this almost plasticky see-through paper, but it didn't really work because I couldn't paint on top of it because I wanted to paint the raindrops on top of the window. So that didn't work. But then I had this other paper that was more of a vellum paper, but you couldn't see enough through the paper. So I just had to go with this like glassine bag, and I got this with like an order. I just got some parts out of it and glued it on the other side of the window frame. It doesn't work perfectly. It's not as see-through as I would have liked, so that's a bit of a problem, but it works fine. It's also kind of like crackly when you flip the window frames over, but it's fine. With my glue tape roller, I glued this page to the one that's below so it could always stay in place. So off camera, I quickly just used my acrylograph to make a little frame for the whole painting and the window frames as well, because it just looked a little bit weird when you open the windows, because there wasn't like a frame for the painting itself or the view itself. So I just quickly draw that little border, and then I started working on the raindrops on the windows. So my technique for these raindrops is really simple. I was just using a light colored gouache. It's not completely white, it has a little bit of gray and brown in it, but I just made these little dots with my small brush, and I tried to make them kind of uneven and random. And then I added this little dots of just a little bit darker gray on the top part of all of those little dots and raindrops. It just adds a little bit of shadow to the raindrop. And then I was using my 01 gray Pigma Micron outlining all of the raindrops. And that is it. It was super simple and it's a really fast way to do it, but of course it still always takes a little bit of time to paint all of those little raindrops by hand. But the next part was adding a couple of papers to the spread, because I think this painting, even though it was a fun one, it still lacked something. So I took this really dark brownish paper and just glued that on the right side of the painting, and then I took this text paper and just glued it underneath the window. And even though those decorations were really simple, I think they definitely brought this whole spread together. Then I used my Flying Tiger stamps. They are just really cheap and random. I wish there were better quality, but I don't have any better ones. But I was just using them, and I was basically coloring them with my brush pen so the ink would look better, and then I just stamped the November header underneath the window. Because they were a little bit uneven and didn't pop out from the paper enough, I just went over the letters with my Pigma Micron fine liner and also outlined them a little bit with my white pen. I feel like all of my white pens were not really working perfectly for this, so I tried out so many, but it didn't really turn out that good in the end anyway. I just outlined some of them with the pen so they could pop out from the text page a little bit more. But that is it for this cover page. It's really simple, but I think it turned out super fun. And even though I like it, it's definitely my least favorite page out of all of these because I just love all of the other ones so much more. So this suddenly turned out to be like a scrapbooking theme. So I started my calendar spread by first cutting out a Dutch door on the right side. This was a really fast decision because I just didn't really have a clear picture of what I wanted this theme to be. So I started making decisions on the spot, and I'm actually really happy that I did because for the first time in a long time, it actually worked out. So for my calendar spread, I glued this darker brown color paper that I used for the cover page as well. And I decided to fill the whole calendar and all the white spots with that paper. So there's no white showing through, which was something that I've never done before, I think. And it was so much fun. So I just glued it in here and also glued the text page on the right side. By the way, I sometimes get questions about the old book page paper that I'm using, so I will link it in the description of this video so you can print it out as well if you like to. I just found it on like a website and printed it myself, and it has worked really well. I haven't had to pay for an expensive paper or anything like that. So for my calendar itself, I took this graph paper that was from my Etchr Olive Neapolitan notepad, and I just glued it on top of the darker paper to have my calendar grid on top, and I can write all of my important dates in it. By the way, I want to say that I think this whole theme and the idea that I was doing was inspired by Journal Away or Anna. I've watched her videos for a long time and I've always really looked up to her because of her creativity and the way she makes her bullet journal themes. And I don't know, I've always lacked that kind of free and fun feel whenever I've made themes. And I think her videos and her way of creating art and just working on her bullet journal themes has really taught me a lot. So I think this free attitude towards my bullet journal theme was definitely inspired by her. So I want to give some credit to her and her creativity for kind of pushing me over the edge and trying out something new. So I will definitely link her YouTube channel down below if you haven't already seen her videos. If you haven't, please check them out. I know you would like them as well. So I decided to stamp the November header with white instead of black because of course the black wouldn't really show, and I think that actually looked really pretty. And lastly, I just wrote the days of the week with my white gel pen on top of the calendar, and that's my simple November calendar spread. So off camera, I already went and cut these rectangles out of this kind of see-through brown paper, and I glued the calendar grids on top. And I also made the header for my habit trackers because I did kind of the same thing as with my cover page. And this actually turned out to be one of my favorite spreads in this whole setup. I love this so much. I think it was so much fun to work on this and just see all of the different textures and elements and different patterns on top of each other kind of working perfectly together. So I made these fun little box headers for each of the small calendars in my habit trackers. I actually got the idea to do this from Dea from Tea and Bucho, who talked about this in one of her recent videos, because I remember we all used to do these box headers with black and we drew on top of it with white gel pen. So I remember she talked about it and I was like, yeah, that was a time. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I just remember I did that when I started bullet journaling. So I decided to use the same kind of style, but in maybe the adult way in my bullet journal, because I was definitely a bullet journaling baby when I first did that. But I love this cinnamon shade of Etchr and Olive Acrylographs that I used in this setup. I think it really tied this page and this whole theme together because of the little pop of color it added to all of my spreads. Then I wrote the headers for my habit trackers on top of that box with my white gel pen, and that's it for my tracker spread. This time I tried to focus on spreads that I really liked using, so instead of working with my mood tracker for November, I decided to add a little playlist page in here because that's always something that I like doing, and I feel like what's the point of making a mood tracker if I don't really even use it, even though it kind of would be useful in a perfect world. So again, I did the header off camera, but I just wrote playlist on the upper portion of the page, and then I glued these little squares of this see-through-ish white paper, and I thought that if I want to, you know, add some album covers on top of them, I can do that later, or I can draw something on top or just attach some washi tape or something. I can do that, but I just left it really simple for now, and I outlined the boxes with my fine liner. After that, I just added all of the songs in there, and yeah, that's it for my super simple trackers and playlist page, and I really love how this turned out together. I love the addition of the craft paper. I think it really works with the really dark look of this page, and it brings some color into it. But that is it for this spread, and now we will go to the next one. So last month I tried out this monthly goals page, and I actually liked using it a little bit more than some of the other pages that I made. So I decided that I could try it out again and also have my monthly review page next to it, so it would be easier to see both of them next to each other and refer back to my monthly goals when I write my monthly review. So as a little background, I glued this textbook paper to one of the pages and the dark brown paper to the other page. And then I just stamped monthly goals and monthly review on the top of the pages. As you can see, I'm not really painting in this whole theme much, but this just came so naturally to me for some reason, even though I've never really done like a scrapbooking theme. I'm not even sure if this is a scrapbooking theme, but I had so much fun with this. Again, I'm saying it for the millionth time, but I just really enjoyed letting go of the idea of trying to make everything perfect and interesting and spending a lot of time with each of my pages, because that's something that I've always done, and that is usually taking a little bit away from the enjoyment of my, setups, because I just feel like each time that I'm making a new video, I have to spend so much time making it. But this time, I think I spent 2 days on making this, but I feel like most of that time was just me contemplating what I wanted to add to each page, but still the process of actually making the pages was really enjoyable and a lot more freeing than before. So if you're struggling with the same things, please try this kind of technique out and do something fun and out of the box, or at least out of your comfort zone. I think that could definitely help you. So as you can see, I added these craft paper rectangles on top of the pages, and they're gonna be my boxes for all of my questions and all of my things I want to write down in this spread. And then I made the little box header for each of them with the acrylograph shade as well. I left the headers blank for now, and when I have time to think about my next month's goals, I will write some questions and some headers for these boxes as well. But that is it for that spread, and now we will go to the last spreads in this whole setup, which are my weekly spreads. For these spreads, I decided to cut some Dutch doors and tabs. And here we are painting a little bit, and this is actually a super quick painting that I did because this only took 22 minutes. So I was in a bit of a hurry at this point, so I tried to work on this painting really fast because we were going to see a movie later. And I think that was actually a good thing because I don't know how I was able to be that fast with this painting. But yeah, we are starting again with the sky, but here I made a bit of a lighter sky here in this painting, and then I started making this kind of gradient in the bottom of this painting. So first we're taking a lighter brown and then we're mixing some darker brown, and I'm just trying to blend them together a little bit. So this is more of a cityscape instead of a landscape with forests and trees, and as you can see, I'm just taking the lighter shade that I used for the bottom of this painting, and I'm just gonna mixing that to the darker color to create the silhouettes and shapes of houses and roads in the city. And I'm not doing it precisely, I'm just randomly adding these lines everywhere and also blending them to the darker color underneath to have this more blended look, because of course if you're looking outside a rainy window it's gonna look a little bit more blended. And I'm adding the raindrops on top, as you can see as well, and here you can see maybe better how I'm making the shadows for each of the raindrops, and this definitely brings the painting life. It will look good anyway, but I think adding that little bit of a shadow to the raindrops will definitely make it look a lot better. I'm also, when I'm outlining the raindrops, I'm sometimes outlining them with a thicker line and sometimes with a thinner line to make them look a little bit more realistic, because of course you will not have those super thick outlines when you look at a window, and it's not supposed to be that realistic either, but just to make it a little bit more realistic looking, I'm usually just using my fine liner in an angle so I can make the lines a little bit thinner. But that is it for this whole painting. Like I said, it only took 22 minutes, so it was definitely one of the fastest paintings that I've ever done. Then I'm using the craft paper again, and I'm just gluing it onto the right upper side of this whole spread, and I'm also gluing some of that text page on top of that. Here I will have a little note section for my weekly, so if there is something happening this month that I want to remember for the whole month, or some random little monthly tasks that I have to write down, I can just add it right here. As you can see, I did the same thing here that I did last month, so I will have all of my weeklies for November in this really big Dutch door spread, and all of the white pages that I have on the bottom are one spread for each week, so I can just flip through them and write all of my weekly journaling entries in these pages. Just in case I want more writing space this month, I also left the last Dutch door empty so I can write anything I want in there. The last little detail for this spread was adding my task list on the right side of my first weekly spread. But that is it for this whole monthly setup for November. I really love how it turned out, and I really hope you like it too. It's definitely different from my usual style, but I hope you like it because I think there's more of these to come in the future. But now we will quickly flip through all of these pages that I made in this video. If you like this one, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and leave a thumbs up, and leave a autumnal leaf emoji down in the comments so I know you watched until the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!